To learn about the off-grid lifestyle and to be inspired to live your dreams, click subscribe so you don't miss anything. Hit the bell notification. So I've been telling you that Carolyn and I are going to start processing and canning meat, chicken specifically, because we have so many chickens. So last night I watched a news video and they were talking about meat prices going up quite a bit. And I thought, you know, maybe now that we have the pressure canner, we ought to go into town and just take a look at meat prices, see what we're seeing. Of course, our freezer's full. We got that little apartment-sized freezer. That's why we're going to cans, because we just can't store that much meat. So we drove into town last night and we found chicken for 54 cents a pound. It's legs and thighs. It's a big bag of chicken in the frozen meat section. So you can get a 10-pound bag for $5.40. Like I said, we didn't have any room in our freezer, so that meant that if we bought anything, we were going to have to empty out the refrigerator. We only have a couple items in the refrigerator, and we were able to put all 3 bags, so 15 pounds of chicken, in the fridge. They're still frozen today, and then we got the contents that we removed back in, and it all fit. So this morning, I got up immediately and I started cooking the chicken. So what we're going to do is we're going to can chicken. We're going to make kind of a soup. Now, I discovered I bought the wrong size jars. I wanted to get quart jars and we got pint jars, which is not that big of a deal. It just adds up the cost a little bit because your lid cost is so high. The name brand lids are $1 a piece, and the off-brand lids are 25 cents a piece. Using pints instead of quarts, we're going to have to use more jars, meaning we're going to have to use more lids. So I've ordered the correct size this time. Now, the instructions say cook it to about 2/3 done. Carolyn and I disagree with that. We've always disagreed with that. We cooked it until the meat starts to fall off the bone, and then we'll put it in a bucket. We'll let it cool a little bit, and we'll remove the meat from the bone, and then we start packing our jars. So I'm going to start removing this and getting it into a bowl. Now, we've been cooking it since 6:30, and I think it's 9 o'clock right now. The biggest portion of the time was trying to get the water to heat up. Okay, so while the chicken is cooling, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to heat up the jars, and I'm going to sterilize them a bit. But more importantly, we're hot packing. So the liquid that we put into the jars, the chicken liquid, and the chicken is going to be warm. So if I pour warm water into cold jars, the jars could crack. So I got to equalize the temperature a little bit. So I'm going to heat up the jars, and then we'll fill the jars with the chicken and the broth. And so this is the broth. Now, of course, you don't want to put the fat in there, and I'm going to show you how to keep the fat out. Now, there's 2 ways you can do it. One, you can put it in the fridge and let it cool off, and all that fat comes to the top, and then you scrape it off. Of course, we don't have a big enough fridge to do that with, and we don't want it to take all day, so we're going to take a syringe, one of those large meat syringes, and we'll just suck the water out of it from the bottom because all the grease is at the top. In the instructions, it says that you can put your cans, your jars, in a dishwasher and let it heat up that way. Now, I have used the hot water heater. Our hot water heater gets pretty hot. It's an on-demand water heater. So the water heater got it up to about 130 degrees. I want to try to get it up to about 160 or 180. So that way the temperature of the broth and the temperature of the jars are about the same temperature. Now again, since the jars are hot and we're going to put hot broth in the jars, that means the water that I'm going to use for my pressure canner has to be hot. So what I did was I took the jars out, and I need 3 quarts, so I got 6 jars here with water in it. I'll just pour this back into the canner. That'll be my hot water, so when I stick them back in, the jars won't crack. After that, the next step is we're going to fill the chicken into the jars, put our broth in, and then we can start pressure canning. So when you're moving your hot jars, you can buy this in a kit at Walmart. It has all kinds of different things, tongs and knives and different things. And what you do with this is you pick up your jar with it, and you won't burn yourself. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm kind of spreading it out evenly because I'm sure we're going to have more chicken or less chicken, whatever the case is. I want to make sure each jar is filled equally. I don't have a half-empty jar at the end. Okay, so one of the things you don't want to do is get the fat into the jar because all the fat will just rise to the top. And so since all the fat's at the top of the pan here, the best way to do this is take a syringe like this, and you go down to the bottom where all the water is, and you just suck that up. All right, so now I got my broth into my measuring cup. I put my bouillon in it, my flavoring, which is, I use this better than bouillon stuff. It works really good, it's a little paste. And so now I'm going to fill the jars with the bouillon, 1.25 inches from the top. Okay, one of the things you got to do is, you can buy this in this kit also that came with this. There's just a variety of things that came in this kit. And then the next thing you got to do is you got to wipe the rim of the can with a damp cloth. And then you're going to take the end of your knife here, it has a magnet on it, and you have to sterilize your lid. So you put them in a pan of water and you boil it just for a minute. And then this has a magnet on it. You pull the lid out and put it right on the can. And then we'll put the ring on to tighten it down. Now each pressure canner is different, so you're going to want to look at your brand to see if you're supposed to put this on first or 10 minutes after it starts boiling. With ours, it has this little pop-up indicator. It'll pop up to let us know that we need to start timing, and then this will start jiggling at that point. You turn the flame on full blast until that pops up. And then when it starts jiggling, you start to throttle down, so it just barely jiggles a little bit. That way you don't evaporate all your water. Now, we took the skin and the bone off all the chicken, and we just put chicken meat in the cans so that we have all the scrap. Fortunately, we can feed the chicken meat, the skin, to the chickens. Added protein, added fat. This is really good if you do it in the winter, it gives them added fat. And then in the bones, we can put that in the compost, and it will actually compost, I think, in 6 months or so. So nothing goes to waste. Everything is used. Okay, you'll see that this has now popped up. I missed it. I was trying to get it on camera, but I was just too late. But that sits there, and it steams and steams and steams, and that'll pop up. And then once we get to 15 pounds of pressure, this thing will start jiggling. So now all the pressure is starting to build up. Now, your instructions tell you what pressure to use. I got 15 pounds of pressure weight on there. You're supposed to use 10 pounds above if you're below 1,000 feet, and you're supposed to use 15 pounds if you're above 1,000 feet. We're above 1,000 feet, so I went with that. It'll probably take another 5 or 10 minutes for that to start jiggling, then I'll start my timer. Okay, so it started rattling. So that means that this is at 15 pounds of pressure now inside the canister. So that kind of just jiggles that steam out. So we'll start the timer, and the timer came with the package of things that we bought. And so we'll start the timer, 75 minutes for pints, 10 pint jars is what we have. It would have been 90 minutes if we had had quarts. When this thing starts really rocking and rolling, I will need to turn down the heat because you don't want all the water to evaporate. You just want a small little So it's really starting to book now. Okay, so I got about 18 seconds left before I turn off the burner and I remove the pressure canner from the stove. I've had to adjust the temperature on the stove quite a bit, I guess because it's outside and the wind would blow and it would cool off the canner and it would slow that down, and then you turn it up. So I'm going to shut it off, and then I'm going to remove it from the stove, and then I'm going to start cooking some more chicken. Now this is a fairly important step that you don't want to mess up. You got to wait until this little popper up valve drops down. You don't want to take the lid off, you don't want to take the jiggler off or anything, because if you do, you're going to depressurize it instantly, and you're going to have rapid depressurization, and the jars can crack, or the contents in the jars can come flying out of the jar. it'll be a big mess. So you let this cool off, and then you can take the jiggler off, take the lid off. Then you'll take your jars, set them on a towel, let them cool off, and then the top of the can will start popping, and it'll pop in, creating a vacuum. If you take the lid off right now, you would have 15 pounds of pressure just slapping you. It would be pretty violent. So don't do anything until that valve drops off. So now you'll see that this little valve has fallen down. Well, that's still hot. So that means that the pressure has released. It's cooled down enough that there's no pressure in the canner. So now I can remove this, take that off, and I can take the lid off. And so now I can start removing the cans from the canner. So now I've got all the cans out. You can see the white residue. That's calcium because we have well water. And so there's so much steam in there that calcium just accumulates. I'll wipe that off later, just powder. The cans are already starting to suck in. I've heard, looks like we got 3, maybe 4, 5 cans that have already popped in. Yep, right there. I don't know if you heard that, but that one just popped in. So they're already popping in pretty quickly. That's great. So I hope I can inspire you to save costs on your meat products when you're living your dream. Thanks for watching.